style we no lend. For sure, we no dey beg no friend. From inna the thing far way back when for the elders and the children. Can't do the thing they gonna to do it like George. Back it up inna the garage. Make they know we squad living large. Pull a salute every sarge. Disappear for a while, but now I am back again. Introducing a new style, them call the Ling Bang. I am a musical zen, violating the charts again. Disappear for a while, but now I am back again. Introducing a new style, them call the Ling Bang.
Okay.
I am a musical zen, violating the charts
Greetings.
Ling Bang.
Alright, I see you clicked on already on the set up the countdown, so alright, let's go. Come on.
Big bully in a pen, Ling Bang. Rooster or hen.
Wait for them boy, wait for your boy.
Like when you shake it, never gonna DR, we can't fake it. Entire yam, heart and thick. Mama take
I don't wait for your boy come in.
Alright.
You got something you want to deal with? Right away? No matter to me, I mean, you're good.
Yeah.
You're the chairman.
Come on. With the run, so.
Yeah, that's why I say, hold on.
The chimble like we don't tease it. Tell the DJ, rewind it. Bust that sweat and work it. Disappear for a while, but now I am.
All right, we're on anyway. Good evening. Greetings once again from Belize City. A little cooler than it has been, but certainly we have not been as hot as Texas. I've seen some reports that are suggesting those people are around 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a lot of heat. I don't know, the sun getting closer. Interesting enough, we just came out of there's somebody coming in, Joe. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Wednesday again. Boy, they come around quickly, don't they? I really believe time is flying, boy. And it, instead of like toilet paper, it goes faster as you get closer to the end. I hope that the end of everything and not just the end of one or two of revolutions, no? But Joe, a pleasure again, sir. We meet. I must announce that Gregory called in and made an excuse. He will not be able to do it this evening, so you and I will go on a duo kind of move. Anybody out there have any specific input? We welcome that. We encourage you to join in, and we have to find out where they could call. And also, I believe StreamYard allows you to have up to 10 participants at a time. So it'll be up to CY. They can always contact him if they want to get in and discuss a few things. We're pretty wide open as far as that is concerned. You're pretty knowledgeable, Joe, and experienced. So we've both been around the block there a few times. So we kind of know a thing about more than one thing. So if anyone out there would like to get involved, please let us know. A couple of things out there, Joe. Before we go on, I see some crazy kind of weather hitting all across the U.S. The heat wave in Texas, the tornadoes in the Midwest. I saw in Miami, in Florida, people are drowned in hand over fist. I mean, 7 people drowned in 9 days. That kind of excessive. Where they go on up the side there? They being hit by some mysterious plague. Is it some kind of wake-up call? What do you think? Are that just the natural occurrences?
Well, Mr. Chairman, before I comment on that, would you allow me to just comment on the absence of Mr. Gregory, who I believe has been a great contributor to this show. And the vacuum created by his absence tonight will be a challenge for you and I to fill. But we have to go forward as the 2 Spartans now, and we must guard the gate till he comes back.
Indeed.
So I must say thanks to Mr. Gregory. I think he has been very good as a contributor to the good of the show.
Yeah.
And the issue of the climate is an area that I myself have never gone sufficiently perhaps into, simply because, first, I believe in the scientists who are saying it is the climate change from the warming of the earth. I am a believer in that one. And then there are those who try to prove that historically this is the way it has been. But I can only go now by even my living experience, and I could ask yourself and those of us who are in police, what I am experiencing this year in terms of the longevity of the heat evidently is not something that I believe we were experiencing the last 2 3 years.
Well, not the last 2 3 years, but we've had droughts before, and certainly extended dries.
But I'm not sure that's what I'm saying though. We have to look at the scientific data. But what I was reading, and I'm coming back to the question about what is happening in the US, is that the scientists now are saying that it's very unprecedented. We have never had 3 storms coming from across within the month of June. He said this will happen more around September. And then they are saying that the waters have gone 2 to 5 degrees above what it was used to be. So when you ask about what is happening in the United States, and it's all about nature itself, things created by nature from the atmosphere, etc. So I believe that these two could be occurrences as a result of the warming of the earth. I don't know how else you can explain. If the historical evidence is saying this is the normal thing that happen annually or every 3 4 years, because we're talking about the hundreds and hundreds of years. So I ascribe what I'm seeing and hearing, all these different natural catastrophes happening in the US. And I believe most people too are beginning to accept that it has to do with the climate change.
I don't know that I am as in line with the scientific theories as you are. I think the climate has always changed. I think we had no less than 2 or 3 ice ages down the line. Man has found a way to adapt. We talk about it getting hotter and the water getting warmer, but the winters have always also seemed colder. So I don't know if that one effect. I remember growing up, we had a refrigerator. It was an Electrolux, and we used to have to light it, and I was always amazed that you get cold from heat. So I don't know if the extent heat is also as a result of the extent is the extensive cold also as a result of the heat. No, that one puzzling thing, and nature seems to have its own way of doing one thing. Then it kind of we could predict to a certain point, but we really don't know exactly from year to year how it's going to be, and we have these El Nino and El Nino effects, which supposed to affect the weather now.
But we know for a fact, Mr. Chapman, that climate change is nothing new. Climate change has been around for hundreds and maybe thousands of years. We know that. Now, do we know then when the glaciers are the link with North America and the Siberia area? Man is believed from historical evidence crossed over to come from the other parts of the world. And that's how they got over here. Then after that, that melted away. So there was climate change always taking place. That climate change at the time when that was melted, we never paid much concern to it because we felt that fine. What it did was open waters, and then we can come across, but we have to come by boat. But what we are concerned about now, that because we happen to know, it seems scientifically, that it is man now. At that time, we could not have contributed to climate change because of fossil fuel. We never had that among them. But what we are saying now, that the climate change that we are experiencing comes out, and to put it bluntly, and experts are admitting that, it comes out of what some of them blatantly refer to as capitalistic greed. In other words, we know for a fact what is in fact causing the heating up. We know that it is the fossil fuel because we are using far more than we used to. So we know that that is causing it. But those who want to defend it for the benefit of their own pockets have found ways to be able to try to prove that It's not so. But if you look at all the countries now, even the United States, except maybe under Trump, have all agreed, all the developed countries have agreed that they have to do something to control the green gases.
Would you say
The question, sorry to interrupt, the question is that they have set the target that if they do not reduce the Celsius by 1 to 2% by a certain time, this is what will happen. So scientifically, they can prove that. But how prepared are we to do the restraint, to exercise the restraint and move to alternative? It will cause a lot of what you call the technological disruption.
I've heard some experts say that it's already too late, that it doesn't matter what man does now, that it's irreversible. Aren't we though in our adapting more to the solar and now electric cars? Have we not been cutting down on that fossil fuel anyway? And it seems that in particular, if we get to electric cars, it will be a mass reduction in the use of it.
Well, I agree, but let me come back to the statement that scientists is saying that it's irreversible. And it's a fact they're saying it, and it's a fact. But what they're saying is that what has gone is reversible, but we can stop the worst yet to come. That is what we are saying. We cannot reverse it. What has gone has gone. But there is worse to come, and we can prevent the worst to come.
Well, no. What I've heard them say is not that we have not what is done is done. It's that they're saying what we have done has been enough to do the damage to the earth that will be irreversible. That you can't do nothing about that. And no matter where though, no, if you stop now, then it's already too late. This is, and it sounds a bit pessimistic, but certainly they seem to know what they're talking about.
I didn't understand it to be like that. I understand it to be that, let's take the case of Belize, which is included in the projection. If it continues as it is, by 2050, much of Belize sea coast, especially up more into the north, will be washing away. No, it's a fact that Belize has to lose already some of its island. The other day in the Silky, they had to go out there. They created a community approach to save it. We're seeing it in Monkey River area. Now, if you look at the 2050 forecast, it is showing you that if we do not slow down the heating, by 2050, how much we would have lost of Belize. And then it gone on for another 50 years. And what it is showing, that if you do not slow down the Celsius increase, is that the only part that will left of Belize by then will be only in the south. In other words, only the highland, like Toledo and Cayo, will remain. All the lowland, because the lowland for Belize is more in the north, beginning from around Belize City, some part of our Belize district. And the whole of that will go. That is what we are forecasting.
Is Toledo high? Are you saying? I thought Toledo was low.
Toledo, the whole. If you look at the southern part of the country, I don't know if you have been up to what they call Mayan Heights. It's just across from Hopkins. You go up there and you get a panoramic view of that area. You can see how high it is. But as you begin to come down, moving towards the north, the land gets lower. That by the time you reach Belize City, we are just at sea level.
Yeah, you mentioned Monkey River, and somebody was saying that what we did was interrupt the natural flow of things, because normally the river washes down silt, and the sea washes it back up, and that's what keeps the shoreline active or where it is. But then in fact, with the shrimp farming that was there, they were pulling so much water out of the river before it reaches the sea, that had an adverse effect on the whole ecosystem. You know anything about that?
Yes, I'm very familiar with it, because we actually saw it happening in the Placentia area.
Yeah.
So they begin to stop In other words, that area there where they have the plantation farm,
Yeah.
they had given permission for them to do an enclosure far out into the sea. But the people begin to complain because the environmentalists and the scientists did prove that what was coming out from the river and bring down the sand from the mountains is what kept the coast.
Right.
You
Full.
know,
Yeah.
in Placentia, where we have a home there, when we moved from there, we were not far from the beach. But then we had gained land. There was a period when we were gaining land because of what was coming down.
Hmm.
But because of when they begin to, and you are quite right, that had nothing to do with climate change through fossil fuel. That was because of man interfering with nature through the building of those same enclosures. So they stopped them. They stopped that from happening. Then they wanted to break at a narrow point by the Placentia to open it up so that the boats coming in don't have to go the 14 miles down to come in. They can enter up by mile 9. But they stopped it too, because if they had cut that open, they are showing what the damage would cause to the peninsula. So you are quite right to say that maybe what is happening in the case of Monkey River is not necessarily has to do with this heating of the earth. It's simply because of stopping the flow. I remember where a Nigerian scientist told me one time, an engineer. He said, "Let me tell you something, Mr. Koi." He said, "Nature has a damn good memory. You artificially change the course and you find a way back." And that's what happened in that year.
There were an amazing phenomenon, I'll tell you that. And when we see the work of nature, now you talk also too that the damage that would be done in opening up them ways and dredging, because that now it has been put on the front burner. The idea of dredging with these ports that are proposed, and it brings us right back to the whole port matter. There are, I believe, 4 or 5 ports, if not proposed, in production, in the process of coming on stream. Stake Point, I understand Stake Bank is just about done and ready to go once they get all their clearances. Waterloo, of course, wants to do their thing. The Portico one is raising a whole, you got to sin bite, Commerce Bite port down south that's already, they've already cleared that and the ships are coming in and unloading there. How much damage is going to be done to our whole ecosystem with these ports that are being constructed?
Well, I like the question you are putting, Mr. Chairman, because you did talk about the ecosystem. The clearing of mangroves is not just because you're removing a buffer. Because if you remove it as a buffer, you can replace it with man-made walls.
Seawall, yeah.
But when you are tampering with the ecosystem, the biodiversity that we are blessed with, then is where you have to be careful. And I believe that one of the reasons, I know this for a fact, because when we were doing some development, we had to get environmental clearance. And we had to satisfy the authorities that the work that will be done in the inner lagoon for the development of the area for tourism, that it would not in any way be interfering with the ecosystem. It's not so much the buffer, because the buffer, you can replace that with, with human technology. But it's the ecosystem. So you're quite right.
Well, it's
to be the biodiversity of the country.
I think it's good to know that there is something in place, because in particular we in Belize tend to do things helter-skelter and just get it done because the benefit way and not look at the long-term consequences. But how adequate is the system in place that prevents this abuse of our natural resources and this endangerment of our environment? We hear a lot about this EIA and these clearances that have to be gotten before projects get underway. How adequate is it, and how strict are they in their adherence to these guidelines that are set in place?
Mr. Chairman, again, I would say that these are issues that we need to seriously talk about. Now, whenever I become engaged in a conversation of this, I have to first yield to the scientists because I am not an environmental expert. But you don't have to be the cook if you know how good food tastes.
Hmm.
You don't have to. But you can be a person who says that, listen, I understand that if we look at the city of Belize, if we were not to have tampered with the filling of Belize, Belize City would never be what it is. Belize City would have been a little island, maybe just like Kikaka. So the reality is that sustainable development, sustainable human development, is the balancing of it. And I think that is what we should all agree. And then let the expert give us the input to determine the balancing. So the sustainable human development is that it must not be just for this and the next generation. It must be for generations, many generations to come. So what is it we want the generation 200 years from now or 100 years from now? We want to know that they will be able to live off the earth and off nature. That is that's sustainable development. But sustainable development doesn't necessarily mean that you will not tamper with things for the benefit of man. You don't subordinate man to nature, otherwise man will not survive. But neither do you subordinate nature to man, so that the proper balance.
But it's a delicate balance, because progress does bring problems.
So this is where I would say, now let's come now to the decision to be made by the state for the benefit of the nation. The state, given the responsibility by the nation through the voting, has a responsibility to ensure that when you are making decisions and passing laws in Parliament, you, the representative, where especially one, you are not a lawyer, and however sincere you may be, you can be seriously, sincerely wrong. So, when you did this study, by the $1 million study that was done to deal with the issue of cruise ship tourism, what is very obnoxious and offensive to the citizens, you spend millions of dollars, which was the right thing to do a study by the experts. But when the experts don't do this study, you choose to govern through the flavor of the week economic policies. You put aside this study and say, you know something, man, we can benefit them. When they say we don't mean the citizens of the country.
Correct.
We to stay in power, to perpetrate our power, we give in and yield to the greed of capitalism, because when they come to Belize to invest their millions of dollars, they know that in 30 years' time, that product will be in fact depreciated, but they can still benefit from it. But when they get back their returns and make their millions and millions, what will we have for the future? So to me, these are the things that we need to be more alert to. Why is it that the study, which was paid millions of dollars to do for cruise ship in this country, why was it not complied with by governments? I know
the governments. You're absolutely right. Governments, because both of them are guilty.
The point is that the study was done, paid for by the taxpayers, which was a good thing. But why is it when the study said that in the south, because of the ecosystem, which was so fragile, he said you must use packet-sized ships. The packet size are 800.
Right.
So they showed where with the 800, you're getting like the 5-star hotel then. And what they will spend will be as much as the 3,000 ship. But the impact on the ecosystem will be far worse. Now you are getting, it took you 4 at that time, 10, 12 years ago or more. It took 4 of those cruise ship tourists to make 1 overnight. So, you control your cruise ship. Don't allow it to just let it be growing without any controls. Because you want to destroy the very product that you could make so much from the overnight tourists.
But Joe, isn't this where we should be going though? I mean, as opposed to trying to get as many of these ports built as we can and get as much investment in there as we can be more selective, don't you think, in how many ships we let in?
Of course.
The quality of the people who we allow in?
And therefore, Mr. Chairman, let me come back to the important aspect of our democracy. Democratic efficiency. If without democratic efficiency, you can never develop a country. If a study was done by a government, it no matter whether it's blue or red or green, the taxpayers' money was used to do a study. Now, the very government that the study was done on its initiative to turn around and put the study aside, and then another one takes over and do the same thing. And I'm saying this because if when the study was done 10, 15 years ago, it was made public. Government now comes with a policy and codify the policy it need be to say that this is the extent to which we'll allow cruise ship ports in this country, and these are the areas that we are designated. Now we're going to invite bids, because under the finance and audit reform, you can then invite tenders. Your prejudices might still come in, but it is more difficult. And if you say, boy, in this area, we will only tolerate one, because that's what the study is saying we should do, then we do that. But now you have three competing. One supposed to have gone forward. Two of them gone to the point where they have a definitive agreement just to codify it into law. And the third one is saying that he never get a fair shake. All of these things could have been avoided if we had gone through and followed the study and codify what we need to codify into law. I'm not hearing you, Mr. Chairman.
I had to mute this there. I got my phone in the ring there. Sorry about that. The disturbances, and I'm not. They got one thing we're supposed to go tell me, may I call you back and things like that, but sometimes I show up on the phone. So, no. But let's stay with the port issue and in fact the whole Portico thing. How many, in your opinion, should we go with 4 or 5 ports, or do you think that maybe we should contain ourselves to maybe 2 or 3 strategically located?
Well, like I said before, I was a minister of government myself once. I knew that I never had to be the cook, but I had to damn well know good food taste. So what I did, I looked for a cook, and I tasted the food, and it tastes good. Now, the government needed scientific study to be done to advise us how do we now develop the cruise ship tourism in the country.
You're saying they were done. The studies were done.
That's what I'm saying.
We'll put them aside.
That's right. And this is what I'm emphasizing. How do you take the taxpayers' money to do the right thing in doing the study, but then turn around and go on the flavor of the weak economic policy? You did what was the good for you to sustain or keep in power. That's what it is. Why is it that you would have a scientific study done and defy the scientific study? So I think, Mr. Chairman, these are the things that we need to be brutally candid about. However much we may affiliate with the philosophy of any one of our political parties. And I'm saying philosophy intentionally.
All right, let me ask you a pertinent question here. Do you see at any point in the future Belizeans getting to the point where they could look past political colors and biases, partisanship, and maybe look at how this is going to affect us as a country, as a people, and not how it will, whether I boost my party's popularity or harm them in the long run? Are we going to get to that point at some point?
I believe that we can, because that point doesn't necessarily mean it will be 100%. That point could mean that when we have 40% of people who will not become vassals to political parties, subordinated to them because of the benefits you get from them, we don't need to reach 60, 70%.
Give me an opinion. Where are we now? Percentage-wise. Because you say party could help.
Now, what I'm getting at, that when I throw the percentage, I'm not sure what it is, but what I'm saying is that if you have an electorate, the people who are eligible to vote, the first thing you need to encourage is a high turnout. So if you got, I just throw one example. If you got 150,000 people registered to vote, they're registered, they meet the qualification, they can vote. Then you find that the turnout at the polls is at 50%, which do happen in some of the municipal elections, and even lower. So when you have only 50% of the people who are eligible to vote, they are registered to vote, it means only 75,000 people that come out and vote. Now, that's 75,000. Using the present system of first past the post, you can get out of that 75,000, and it does happen, this is the reality. You can get a number less than the majority that form the government. So as you look along and the dynamics of the country, the demography of the country, the culture of the country, meaning the behaviors, when we look at these 40 years such after, they must begin to tell us now where we have gone wrong. And to the extent that we can use laws to remedy it, we do it. But I am of the opinion that laws themselves will not be the remedy. The remedy will be enforcement of the laws.
And adherence, more so than enforcement.
Therefore, coming back now to whether we will get that number, I will say this, that if you have 30% of that electorate, and I'm using 150,000, if you got 20% of that electorate, and that's why you're good to use your mathematical formulas, if you got 20% of that electorate who is prepared to be bold, courageous, to be well sophisticated in its choice, not driven by any inducement with material things,
Personally,
that only at 30,000. But we may not even need 30,000, and that 20% can hold the balance of power. It can. So if that 20% comes out, and only 50% came out of the total, that's 75% voted. But that 20% were committed to democracy and really want democracy to work. If that 30,000 comes out, in fact, I could bring it even less. I could bring it down to 10%. If that 10% comes out, that's only 15,000. But that 15,000 out of 75,000, my brother, you talk about maybe 20%, then hold the balance of power in an election.
Well, that one dream to aspire for, I believe. To
No,
be able,
sorry to interrupt. Sorry about that.
no man.
You have to forgive me.
Run your thoughts.
Maybe that's my passion. I don't see it as a dream, because we don't need to dream. We are now 1981 to now. We're going into for the second year of independence. What we have to learn in 42 years is because the wheel was invented maybe 1,000 years ago. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have the benefit that our 42 years should take us way ahead, because those who came before have shown us the failures and the successes.
Yeah, so, but have we learned? Have we learned anything? I mean, if to hear you tell it now, it would seem you were thinking that we have learned from these 42 years, and we are in a better position than we were back then. But are we really?
Well, let me give you now my judgment, my political judgment from my experience. If you look at the history from, let's put it at self-government, 1964, when we got self-government. And then it took us 17 years after to get independence. The People's United Party was founded in 1950. It came right out of the devaluation. It was the devaluation that sparked the creation of it. So in 1950, the government, this country had one party dominating politics until 1984. So there were 34 years. Now, why was it so? I spent some of those 34 years I would say from 1961 to 1981, I was in government as a public officer. So I spent 20 years of those time. And then I left in 1981 and I gone into private practice, and then I did stint in politics. But looking back, what was happening in the period that brought us there is that it was clearly a party grounded in the workers, because the people felt that colonialism was abusing us and that we had wealth. And if we can only get control over the management of the wealth, there will be shared prosperity. That to me made sense. When Macmillan said, the Prime Minister of the UK, that there's a wind of change blowing through the world. The wind of change that was blowing through the world, that bring a lot of the countries of the Commonwealth to independence, was because they all believed that if they can get control to manage their country, the benefit will come to the people of that country and not to the metropolitan power in London. And that made good sense. It made sense. Therefore, for a period, this country benefited from partisan politics, because the other party that was in at the time obviously was not a favorite for independence. They seem to have been more pro-colonial. So what happened during that period? It was the period when this country made great strides, not because the opposition was pro-colonial, but because we opened up, one, the sugarcane industry, which the farmers, the cane farmers at that time, remember, were cane cutters. Under Tate and Lyle, they were cane cutters. But what happened? They became farmers. Then the fishermen were working for the foreigners who come to Belize to take advantage of our marine supplies, our marine industry. Then we formed the co-ops. Again, we made great strides. Despite the sparsity of the population, we begin to open up roads. We begin to build more schools. We build hospitals. So to me, if you take the period, there was great prosperity. So up to that point, I give Moses credit that he brought us to the point where we're going to see the promised land. And that they use that as a... The thing is now, when you look beyond that period, Joshua, it looked like he never really take us beyond. If you look at that period, G-Mike, anybody looking at that period, this country was making development. And after that period, you can sense what began to happen.
You were talking about the period. You're talking about the period following independence or leading up to independence?
I'm talking about the period of one, when the first political party was formed in the country.
Which is 1950.
Right, because it was then we got into party politics.
Right.
And then, between then and 14 years after, we would have gotten independence, but because of the Guatemalan threat, we had to postpone it. Yeah. So what we had self-government. So the only thing that the British kept control over was the foreign affairs, defense. And that was good for us. We never had to be spending more money for defense at that period.
What I'm trying to get from you, though, that you're saying that for a period there, we were doing well. Because there are people who are suggesting that independence did not bring the wonderful gifts that it promised, that in fact it brought more corruption than anything, because under the British system, at least our people were in check. Now, this period of prosperity that you spoke of, you said for a while we were doing well. That period, would it be before leading up to independence or following independence?
No, I'm saying the period before independence.
Right.
So if you begin with the period from the creation of party politics, let's call it 1950. It was 14 years after we went to, we don't call it independence, except it fell short of foreign affairs, defense, and the public service. But look at what happened. One, during that period, we never had to spend money on defense. The British took care. So from that period, up to 1981, we got the benefit of having a good public service because it was not governed through partisan politics. So the two things that the British held on to until independence, when we got self-government, it was a period too that we had politicians, and I know some of them who never gone beyond primary school, but were upright citizens of this country. They were honest. They were prepared to open the door for their elders. They bid each other the time of the day. So they were honest people. They were just primary school graduates. They were fighters. They fought for their country. So I thought that we were benefiting from the combination, not so much that we had to have a lot of university graduates, because we didn't, but we benefited from the sense of values that was inculcated in us. We benefited from not having to deal with defense. We benefited from not having the temptation to politicize the public service. And then I said we had good people leading us. So when you look at where we came to, up to independence, I thought we did well. But it was after that. And then the first time you had a new party coming into government was 1984. Now look on since then, or if you want to look since 1981, you can see the changes that have taken place when it comes to governance of the country.
So you're saying that the rule of two-party has not been better for us. In fact, it has been detrimental to our growth. Because if
No, I'm not saying by virtue of the rule of two parties. I believe that over that period, when we were opening up the country, yes, we got better education, academically wise. But it seems to me that that same period, the sense of values were depreciating. So when you look at the benefits we had of the people at the time that brought us to that point, they were more upright citizens. They were dedicated people. They were sincere. Then we had the benefit of not getting independence. And it's true, it's kind of an irony because we felt that we should have gotten it in 64. But we were fortunate that we got self-government, which was almost independence. But we got a self-government where we never had to pay for defense. We got our self-government where the law for politicizing the public service was not there because the British had control. That was the period that I served. I served from 61 to 81. So my 20 years of public service was under the British.
under the under self-government. But
Yeah.
now would you say that we would have been ready had we gotten in 64? Or it was wise to wait?
No, I think that we were ready. I thought we were ready for independence.
From 64.
Yeah, I thought we
Um,
were. But what happened? The Guatemalan threat. I
uh,
don't buy onto this thing that, boy, we never ready. Well, if we're not ready, well, then ask Britain for take way back or some other country for take way. I thought we were ready. The problem is that when we did go into it, I gave you the example of what Patterson had said with the dog. Here was the dog bursting, running after this vehicle, barking on all his speed. He caught up with it. And when he caught up with it, he didn't know what to do. And if you look at what's happening to us, when you look across the Caribbean countries, and you talk of the Tom Adams, and you talk of the Manley, and you talk of the Williams, and you talk of the George Price, look at the breed of politicians, G. Mike, that was leading the Caribbean region.
are you a lawyer, Joe?
No,
You're not a lawyer. Now, do you, because you spoke of a time when our politicians weren't exactly degree bearing people, but they had integrity and they had love of country. Have we overloaded our political system with too many attorneys, maybe, and that people who are trained to manipulate facts and even approach government in a Machiavellian fashion where it's okay to lie if it accomplishes your objectives? Are we maybe too
no.
top heavy with those?
No, I think that's a terrible mistake people have made. They make the mistake because they are making the assumption that a noble profession shapes an evil person. That is not true. All these professions are noble. When you look at law, law is a legitimate enterprise. It's the bulwark for our democracy. We are governed by the rule of law. So law to me is one of the number one contribution to our country to develop.
Law, but not lawyers. You talk about two different things.
Exactly. And I'm doing it deliberately because it's not the profession of law that warps the mind of a lawyer. It's not that. That's a mistake we make. It's not politics, which is a noble profession, that shapes the character of a politician. The politician comes to office, the lawyer comes to office, the doctor comes to office, the plumber comes to office, the janitor comes to office with a character, not one that is shaped by being the janitor, the plumber, or the cabinet maker.
So the man born worthless.
I wouldn't say born worthless.
But he turned worthless sometime. He come to the profession with worthlessness.
You are taking me now to a realm that I am my friend Maurice, not Maurice Harland. There is no man that I think lives in sin. Man is sinful, but he doesn't live in sin. Man cannot live in sin because man is a creature of God. And God created man after his image and likeness. His imperfection is never his fault, or the nature of him.
So you're not born worthless. All right, good.
Don't born that way. You are shaped. Mr. Chairman, would you accept the fact that the genetics will predispose us, but our environment will predetermine us?
Say it again. You got to fast for me.
It's our genetics predispose us to our longevity, to our strength. It predisposes us to have a higher level of IQ. Not EQ, because EQ is fixed.
You mean, is it in your DNA?
Right. But it's the environment that predetermines me. You could born with a DNA, your genetics predispose to longevity. That's a fact.
Joe, that one tricky one though, because I don't know that.
That's a scientific fact.
I don't know, no. See, all right, the environment does shape the individual, but there are some people who could see the cut of that jib from early, that they're not nice people.
Yeah, but I don't buy that the person born with that. That's not true. I am saying to you, let me give it one more chance, if you allow me to. Sorry. I had a good another example rather than use the. I am saying to you, a person borns with 110 IQ. The other one borns with 75 IQ. Because you vary with your IQ. The one with the 110 decide they only have developed 60%. The one with the 75 developed 65. But the one with the 110 born predisposed to have developed far more. The born predisposed, but they choose not to have developed. Now, the EQ different. The EQ, emotional quotient, is the same for all of us. So the only thing we can do with that, again, is to see how we can make ourselves, happy, how we can make ourselves not governed by just the emotion. But the bottom line of it, I wanted to make most of all. And the guy that wrote the Watergating on Main Street, one of the most distinguished lawyers during the period in the United States, wrote an article in the Atlantic, and he was very well accepted. He said that we have to begin to stop the treat the profession and the practice as they do they are the same thing. They are not. And he began with the one profession law. So I don't think we should harbor the belief that because you're a politician, that's what makes you what you are. No. You are what you came to office with.
That one cut and dried. That one we could argue for a long time, and probably still not come away with any good conclusion as such. Because then, I mean, if you attack, you're saying, and I almost hear you argue against yourself on it. You say nobody born so, that they make themselves so or they become so because of the environment. Is that what you're saying, basically?
Now, let me see if I can bring it back.
You know, in the DNA.
The janitor found late evening in cleaning up, there was a drawer that was slightly open. And when he looked in there, he saw water money. The janitor has a decision to make. Will I take that money and go away with it? Or will I secure the money to find the owner? That's the janitor. The janitor now maybe gone beyond primary school. So here you have now the lawyer, the doctor, the accountant, the whatever they are, who went to the high level, the tertiary level institution, and he too find his money in the public purse. Now he don't find one water money, which that water was only maybe $200, but he may find $2 million. No, his choice to take it or not to leave it had nothing to do with him being a lawyer, an accountant, a doctor. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with his character. So the janitor faces a temptation that is proportionate to making his decision. If the politician who have already decided to enrich himself find that drawer a little bit open and look in it and saw that it's, when you check it, only $100, maybe 200, to look good, even though he wants to say, boy, no, I try to find who on this. Make it look good, boy, this man honest. But when he may open the public purse and he saw where there was 2 million, where he could siphon off and get away, that's a different thing.
The temptation to great.
When proportionate to him, he has a higher level of responsibility in the nation. And I say higher level not to suggest that the janitor service to the business is not as good as the lawyer to the government and to the governance of the country. The important thing for me, Mike, which I think I will go to my grave with, I will never buy this belief, my brother, that a profession is what shaped you. You have to shape the profession.
I think we can agree on that. What exactly though makes a person do the right thing, make the right choice? And that was what the question was. Is it the environment that he's raised in, with the kind of training to get home, or is it an innate thing? Maybe something that he inherit down the line. He probably worthless, he can't worthless.
I don't buy that.
You know by that.
Nah. If he probably
Well, hold on.
Worthless, that don't mean him born worthless, but he can be because of his father.
Hold on, let's look at something else then. And maybe this, you could say, a behavior as opposed to physical trait. Because the question has been asked, say, for example, homosexuality. Is he born that way, or does he become that way due to the environment? Because basically the same thing we talk about. You say not born a certain way, everybody born the same way.
All right, let me tell you the way I understand it, and maybe this one I'm not an authority on it, but I understand that the person born with an inclination to homosexuality because of some imbalance in the hormones. No, that person doesn't necessarily have to be a homosexual. He can grow up in an environment which was not conducive to develop that imbalance. So he can very well grow up and not be a homosexual. You have another person, and I go by what I read from the science, who never born with no homosexual hormonal differences. But his environment that he growing up in can cause him to go that way.
Or get turned out. Somebody take advantage on and he just decide give up on it.
We who have been around in the Leeds City for many years, with the high, the low, the in between, there are some human beings who wanted to social climb and to be among certain elites in this society that I grew up with. Maybe not as much today as it was. And what they do, they were prepared to affiliate with homosexuals because of the enjoyment they get from the socializing. That
Uh,
That was so.
quite a sacrifice.
I
Quite a
saw.
sac-
You look on certain places, like on seashore, the seashore, the what we call foreshore area. That was an area where much of the elites used to live, and they used to have some parties. I've been to them myself, and I walk away because I saw certain things happening. Some of them never did born, it seems to me, with any homosexual tendency, but simple for becoming, for want of a more nicer word, becoming a prostitute.
hmm,
They are willing to associate because they wanted to be in that limelight, and then they wanted to be among those kind of people. Not
interesting.
the homosexual thing, you know. They wanted to be among them because of life, the social life that they offer.
I never want to get you into
Yeah,
this,
because-
guys. I
yeah,
want
because
touchy, I want touchy topic,
it
and in this day and age, boy,
is, it is.
yeah, you could get
No,
ostracized by just having an opinion on that.
all I
Uh,
wanted to stress it at this point that I don't believe that anybody necessarily
yeah,
on
Ban Crooked.
the way that yeah.
Yeah. All right. Listen, let's go on to Sunday. I'm going to talk about pre-independence, colonial days, and whatnot. I was listening to a conversation the other day about somebody wanting to a move to change the name Mahogany Street. There's been a move to change many of the names of streets in Belize City. They wanted to name it after this young man who had worked with the gangs and whatnot and had passed away. Where name again? But anyway, the thing is that when the argument ensued now, and it came to the point where somebody was saying, well, we need to change it because every time we hear mahogany, it brings to mind our colonial days and our colonial past, and we have to get rid of that. How do you feel as far as that is concerned? um, would you want us to remove ourselves from our colonial past? Let me put it that way. Do we embrace it?
We are no different from what I see happen right in the our good friend in the north, the US, where there were certain people who evidently were treated as heroes with status. But when you think about the past in terms of their cruelty to slaves, but to human beings, I agree that these people should not have status.
All right, pull down the statues. All right.
Yeah,
I
to
don't
me,
think that is same thing though, because now a mahogany tree wasn't really. In fact, the mahogany tree was good to us, our ancestors anyway. Um, and the person made the point that they could find other things to name after this young man, Dawson, I believe his name was, as opposed to taking the name of a street like Mahogany Street, which is an established street. Everybody don't have their address and whatnot there, and the change would probably incur some expense anyway. But uh, should we distance ourselves from our colonial past, or is history already written and we can't do nothing but embrace it? What do you think?
uh, to me, nowadays, look at Mahogany Street as an example. I don't see anything wrong with that street being named Mahogany Street because that has to do with our natural resources. And if it reminds anybody about the exploitation of mahogany by the British, I won't associate that to colonialism. Though there was a time when they had that building before the fire destroyed it, what they call Pasno building. And then when they built it back, the argument was made that do not rename it Pasno, because the name Pasno is tainted with a colonial past.
Well, more than that, he was supposed to have been a cruel slave master, one
Yeah,
thing, but
yeah.
on the other side of that, he was supposed to have been one of the leaders in the June the 1st vote that determined our whole existence, in that they voted to stand and fight as opposed to abandon the territory and run. So it got, obviously, the two sides to his legacy there. Now, would it be just because he was a part of the colonial passers because they thought that he wasn't worthy of being given that kind of status and knowing his history.
Yeah, but if you were abusive of human beings, making them slaves,
Mhm.
and if you believe that because you decided to fight against the Spaniards taking the settlement, I don't see how that fight could anyway remove the guilt of what you did to human beings.
I got you. I got you.
And when I say remove it, is because this could take us into a very sensitive question. If the British had lost, would you prefer Belize to be under the Spaniards?
Well, now interesting question because if we look at the situation in Guatemala and how and the other Spanish-speaking countries who came up under the Spaniards, we might have to concede that we came out ahead under the British. That I mean,
So,
there are those who will tell you slavery was slavery,
uh,
but and colonialism was colonialism. Uh, I don't know. Maybe.
well, no, the reality of the past is that we are prepared to choose the lesser of the two evils. That's a
And
reality.
you believe the British should have been the lesser of the two evils.
Well, I don't believe that. We all believe it. That's why they celebrate the battle. That's why some don't want to celebrate it. But I would believe that I have always seen the Battle of St. George's Key as the day when the nation was conceived, and that independence was the day when the nation was born.
I think it was more June the 1st.
Well, if you want to use June the
conception.
first, fine. I won't argue. Why? The point I am simply making is that the Battle of St. George's Key, in fact, if it is what they said it is, it was to determine who would have been the master.
Which is a good discussion
Looking
because
at history, I would say that the only choice, looking back now, if I have the opportunity to have to look back and make a decision, I felt that it's better to have had that slave master than the Spaniards. If we had the Spaniards, it's likely we would have been a part of Guatemala. Would we have preferred them? Were we in a position then to be able to evaluate that choice, that position, to say that, boy, is it better for us to have gone the way we gone and defeated the Spaniards and then work with the British for our independence? So if you look at the Battle of St. George's Key, it is indeed the day when we're supposed to begin to negotiate for independence.
that kind of early, don't you think? That would have been very early.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
but we satisfied with what we had.
let's go.
We fought some of the battles, yes, coming back from the war. We felt that the British didn't treat us right. So there was some rebellion in the city.
Should we celebrate our past even under the British?
I would say that the celebration of our country's past, which includes colonialism, because most of us were colonies, the celebration of it is more to celebrate the culture, whatever we are in terms of our culture, is to celebrate the things that we held for close to us. So when I look at my past, I look at biodiversity, if I could call it such, but I look at the diversity for sure. I look at the diversity of culture. I look at the Garifuna. I look at the Mayans. I look at the Creole. Then I look at the other minorities. And I said, boy, we are blessed with this diversity rather than being cursed with it. So when we celebrate the past of the Creole, the past of the Garifuna, the past of the Mayans, in whatever way we do, that is our past we are celebrating. We're not celebrating the fact that we were slaves and we were colonized and we were brutalized. No, we don't celebrate that. We celebrate that we have a past. Every one of us that make this nation,
And you can't erase it.
we can't because we were never homogeneous. It was never homogeneous. We have never been homogeneous. Some countries in Europe probably still remain very much, but very few countries.
Oh. Joe McCoy segue into something that we need to talk about: re-registration or gerrymandering. What's happening here in Belize?
I was listening to the news this evening, and it was a repeat of Minister Espat Julius, who was on the show this morning. And I must credit him for what he said. His choice of words maybe were not sufficiently clear to say that, listen, we must take politics out of this thing. But I understand what you mean. You don't mean politics in itself, you mean partisan politics. But you can't take politics out of government. No, I think he was right when he said that, because he went on to amplify and explain what he meant. He said, because what will happen? He said, this thing is quite simple, and I agree with him. He said, all we have to do that make sure we're not going beyond 31 seats. So all we have to do is divide with total by 31. And so we could bring the divisions to that.
I've heard them say that they will have to get rid of a couple of divisions, and then you would be back to 29 or something.
Yeah, but to me, I wouldn't support that.
You still want to say 31. So what you want to do?
Sorry, I shouldn't say I wouldn't support it.
Here's the Belize Constitution, Section 90. A. Each electoral division shall have, as nearly as may be, an equal number of persons eligible to vote. Now that's clear. And it says, and it shall, not may. So as it is right now, we have been in violation of the Constitution for a number of elections.
Exactly.
Because there are some divisions, like Fort George, that got 2,000 odd, and some that has 8,000 odd. Now, this is what in the talk about try equalize it, and I hear them trying to figure around 4,600 as a threshold, they're saying. Kind of like what they're seeking to get for each division. I don't know if they divide 31 into 400,000 or whatever we have now, which I imagine that might be what they have been doing. That how can we get this near to the equal without gerrymandering? Because we know the political parties are not going to give up power if they don't have to, or if they can find a way around it. They're not going to let anything happen that's going to affect their hold on power. How isn't it as simple as putting it down and say, boy, we got X amount of people here, we need to draw the borders of these constituencies so that we have an equal amount in each one?
All right, let's follow the logic of the written law, the Constitution, when it says more or less equal. The only way you could begin with more or less equal to effect it is you have to take the total and divide it by what you want the amount to be. Suppose you say, well, I guess happen. After so many years, I think 31 seats are too many for us. We don't need 31. We might need 25. If you agree on that, then you divide the total by 25. If you say, well, no, I think we should stick to 31, then we divide it by 31. But if you say, why, you know something, I think we should have got 35, then I think we'll get into some difficult areas, because we have to make sure that we have the numbers, given the demographics of this country, that is manageable by an area representative. So, when you look at the country where they have the highest density of the population is Belize City. So Belize City could be, you could manage, let's say 6,000 as an example. You could better manage 6,000 in one constituency in Belize City than 6,000 in a rural area.
Which is spread out, yeah.
So when you look at the variables that you will have to be addressing, you have to begin with the Constitution saying more or less. So if you divide the amount, because you say we are 6 at 31, you divide it by 31. That's the figure we are supposed to aspire for. But whether gerrymandering could still come in. Because you can't gerrymander just by simple not making the numbers more or less equal because of the Constitution. So you can't make no mistake with that. You have to take the figure and divide it by the 31 if that's 31, and that is the figure you forgot more or less. But where the gerrymandering could come in is that when they cut up the divisions to make sure that each one of them more or less equal, that's how they cut it. If you cut the division because you believe that a certain part in what was originally the division before of 7,000, now you make it, I just use a figure, an average of 4,000. You want, as the ear representative to what is that division now, you don't want to see that division cut in a way where you think you got a stronghold.
Mm-hmm.
That's the gerrymandering of what. So the government of the day can live up to the Constitution by making it more or less equal. But when they begin to cut it, like what they did in Caribbean shows, they could cut it for gerrymander.
And probably will. Probably will.
Yeah. If you done the win one division, you're strong in our Queen Square. You don't got that covered. And when you cut it, leave Queen Square to the UDP. I just give you an example.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is that you want to make sure that when you look at Lake I, very big division. Lake I, I believe, garnered the highest percentage of voting history of this country, almost about 90%. The area representative with 90%, they almost lost the deposit, the 10%. So, you decide that, boy, listen, they can't continue with that 8,000, so we are trying to pay 4. The government of the day could decide no way and put the other 4.
Well, see, but this is the thing, Joe, because I hear what you say. I hear you say, Julius.
Right there.
What I'm hearing you saying that Julius Espat was saying is that let us forget the politics and let us try achieve these numbers by what the Constitution is asking for or demanding.
Saying get the experts and leave the politicians.
All right, so let's suppose we got some experts now. That will tell us how best to divide it. Why can't they do that? Why can't we just get the numbers and then they win by just being a good government? Because if you do well, the people will vote for you.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I think we said to leave the politics out.
Yeah.
If you leave out the politics, then you will lessen the chance of gerrymandering.
Well, a need for gerrymandering, you're not to worry about that at all, because you're to worry about just pleasing the people by doing the right thing at the election throughout the course of your government. Not only at election time, but throughout the course of the government, you are doing everything. And a couple of people check in saying hello, Janice. Hi, Janice. I never want to interrupt you when you were speaking for here. And somebody else had come up and just gave a proper, We want, here we go. Stuart Vernon, how are you, Senior? Enough respect to you, sir. We're trying to get this going and get it to a point where we could discuss issues of relevance and get participation. I always remember your favorite term, Joe, participatory democracy. So if we're going to get participatory talk show thing here, that will help us out a lot. I see my I think my camera the feed from here. But no, seriously though, obviously we have to correct this violation of the Constitution that has been occurring. That needs to be done. It looks like there's a move on the way to do it. And in fact, it looks like there's some outside persuasion, because they're talking about experts now from outside who are recommending certain things that need to be done or how it can be done. Is it going to be done? Do you see a seriousness on the part of the government to make this happen?
I always prepare to give the benefit of the doubt first to our government, saying this is what we will do, and if it looks correct, I will not prejudge them and say they don't want to do it anyhow. I will wait to see whether that will happen. Though whatever have gone in the past That to say, boy, they never do it and say then. I agree or condemn that. But we can't just continue to say, boy, they don't want to do it because they never do it before. I understand the reason. I can't say that I can't say that I was just indifferent to that feeling because it's a legitimate feeling. I understand that there used to be a house meeting on Friday. And I'm not sure because I haven't heard the agenda. I don't hear it from anybody who was to do. But it's believed that at that meeting it's likely that the proposal will come to the House as to how to carry out the mandate of the Constitution, no? But the redistricting. Because obviously it might need more money again, so you have to go for a supplementary.
Yeah, we buy along too.
And then you might have a plan already prepared where they want to debate before the House. So to me, up to now, I said, well, that's good, that's transparency. It would be nice if the proposal come to the House, even if it's just a motion.
Well, start the discussion anyway.
Yeah.
A serious discussion on the matter now.
Right,
Because obviously, and again, I read it to the letter that the Constitution does demand
that's
that
right.
it happens. So, and we've been doing it election in, election out the same way. We need to do things differently, man, as we move forward. How would you, Joe? Let me put you up on the spot, yeah? And you being a PUP too. How would you? What kind of report card would you give to this government? 3 terms into office, almost 3 terms, 3 years into office.
Mr. Chairman, I was set my bounds a while ago when I went into the issue of being predisposed a certain way and whatnot, because I agree that we are touching on some very sensitive matters when it comes to people's choice of their behavior sexually, and I agree that it's better. I don't think we should ever legislate against the choice of a person to be a homosexual. I want to make that clear. That is his constitutional right. His issue of his Christian or God-like rights are a different matter. So, to ask me now to try to grade the government, it is difficult for me to attempt to do it in such a short time on the show. The reason why, I have no problem to evaluate performance because that I can do. That is part of our trade and our profession to do performance evaluation. And I can give you now some of the guidelines that can be used and some of the things that will not allow you to do it because we are not complying. For example, quickly, when you pass the Appropriation Act, which is what we call the budget, that Appropriation Act is to give the government the means it needs to carry out its manifesto commitment. So, firstly, the Appropriation Act must be built on the issue of priority and affordability and economy. Once the Act has gone to the Parliament and they are satisfied with it and the people feel satisfied with the Act, how you are begin to judge now? The government is saying that to carry out this manifesto promise that I gave to you all in this 5-year period, we are using the 5-year. I need this 1.4 billion, and I need it in this line items. Now, again, as an accountant, that's how you evaluate a private business, and the same way you should evaluate the public business. It says that this is what we intend to do with this money that the Parliament approved for the executive, although they are one and the same thing. Now, the year finishes, and when the year finishes, the law says that you are to do, that are the Constitution, that you are to do a compliance and probity audit, not a financial audit. And I could explain the difference, but simply put, we are at the stage where we are still on a cash basis of accounting. So all you need to do now with the cash basis of accounting is do the audit. So when you do the audit, the Appropriation Act, then the auditor will say whether you did comply. But what is not yet in the government's requirement in its remit by the Constitution is what you call how he is required to do the output and the results of the output. So when the output comes, And it says that at the beginning, why the budget may call for 150 million for the health system. But at the end of the year, you can't audit it. 7 years, 8 years no audit is done because they can't. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. Now, if I were to judge a government, anyone, just on the basis of not being able to do what the Constitution says, just like with a redistricting, I will give them a very low mark. Because I do not know if when you come back to the house to speak first and the year will almost finished, and then you not talk about the year to come, how do I know that those things you said you did? How can I trust that? I don't know because you are not doing what the Constitution says you have to do. Then
The Constitution demands an audit, right?
that's right.
It's not a yearly thing.
That's
Every
right.
year.
And it sets the time frame within which it must be done.
And has it been done?
For years now, it hasn't been done.
For years. So
No, they
I
are
mean,
claim that they are 7 years behind. We want to do that now.
yeah,
So
yeah.
let us evaluate. I'm not going to do the grading, but I'm going to give guidelines to the listeners. That is where you can begin to look at a government. Secondly, when the government says that, boy, we did budget 150,000, 150 million, we spent it in the recurring, and we budgeted 100 million, and we built a hospital in Belmont for tertiary level care. And the government showed that he did these things. Yet we don't have an audit. But we can go beyond that, and we can say, boy, all right,
Yeah. At least you're seeing something on the ground.
let's say that they build it. But what we are not getting is the output and the results of the output. And what is that? If you tell me you spend 150 million in a recurring and 90 million in a capital, but when I get and I call the Ministry of Health and I ask them, give me the database one with non-chronic communicable diseases and with communicable diseases. And when I look, boy, the kidney problem is the go, the diabetes is the go, the cardiovascular problem is the go, all of the chronic diseases they go up. Then when I look on the communicable diseases, then they go. How can I say that your spending of 150 million was in fact done and you got the results that you projected when you never give me none? So you not only know they carry out the compliance audit and probity, but you are not even giving me something to measure your performance. Suppose I was giving you the database and I said, boy, you know, we kidney patients, the amount of kidney problems, X amount, the amount of diabetes, the amount of cardiovascular, and all of them, even the traffic accidents. And I give you those. And when the year ends, and the database, I can tell you about the database. The database was done manually, and it made no sense because they couldn't really get it done manually. It was PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, under Dr. Arlini, a Jamaican guy, a doctorate in medicine. He was the head of PAHO. I invited him to come to Belize and to look at the health system, and he did. And he asked me what he thinks that we can do for you. I said, Mr. Arlini, Dr. Arlini, you know what I wanted to do? I wanted to give us the resources to build a database system and our digital system. I want us to be able to keep track of all the diseases in this country, private sector, public sector, so that we can measure the performance. I use health because I was that. Mr. Chairman, the same happens with education. What happened? The world has developed a technique as we were modernizing government, that there was a time when people never think about measuring performance in a public sector, driven by welfare. Private sector, you measure because you have international standards to measure profit. But the public sector was not driven by the profit, it was driven by welfare. So the thought at the time was that we can measure. But then governance has advanced so much in the world today under reform that you can measure the fire department performance. And you don't measure it by finding how many fires you out. Otherwise, you go like place and out it. You can measure the performance of the fire department. You can measure the performance of any one of the services, goods and services the government they provide. But we don't do. So, why, what rating would you give the government? I would say, by okay, rate there.
It sound like yeah, you know, got nothing for you. Then fine, they not take the test. They're not passing the paper.
So therefore,
Uh-huh.
if a government is not complying with the law, the constitution, the provisional laws, boy, that's a serious crime and should not be tolerated in our society.
That
Where
that that wants to be
that's it.
successful.
So I
No.
don't know government right now by their color. I'm simply saying,
Mhm.
let us, I think, Mr. Chairman, you ask a question which I think should be asked. Every national television calling show. That is what they should be asking. And then they will find whether the problem.
Tell me, on the other side of it now, Shine has been quite vocal of late. He's been speaking up on issues and whatnot. Have you assessed his worth? I mean, have you seen him now as an able politician or an able leader of the opposition?
You're putting me again in a spot to try to do an evaluation of his performance. And to the extent that he's the leader of the opposition, maybe there is a bias in me that I believe that without an opposition, you can't have democracy. I don't
Mhm.
think Barbados right now is enjoying democracy as it should without no opposition. So any country to me will come to the point where the people of that country votes 31 seats for one party, something wrong with the citizens of that country. So I preface my answer to the question by saying that I am sympathetic to the opposition. I believe that we should have a strong opposition.
Which we don't.
I am saying to you now that when you look at 5 seats in the parliament compared with 26, I think that the leader of the opposition has done a good job to keep them on their toes
Mhm.
because he asks not inflammatory but very provocative questions. And you can sense that those who attempt to answer, how they go into an ad hominem answer. Sometimes they don't answer the question being asked, but they attack the person asking the question.
Mhm.
And I've seen that. So for me, I think the leader of the opposition to be able to hold the fort with only him as the chief, one chief and 4 Indians against one chief and 25 Indians.
But I'd say three Indians because one Indian is always absent. So
All right, well, the one who absent, we agree. So
yeah.
more know that if when you can keep 26 of them, if not everyone and then jumping up, but every minute then jumping up, even some making remarks, attacking,
Yeah.
it is telling you that if the questions I am asking are straightforward questions for which you are supposed to answer, if I ask you a question, why do you spend half an hour to not answer the question but try to justify what you did in a matter that might have some relevance to the question? But I never ask you that. If I ask you the question, you answer the question, I'm going to move on. But you take the question as an opportunity now to answer. But when you answer it, you try to glorify and you try to promote what you did good. And then at the end, maybe you give an answer. And some of them finish without even give the answer.
Without giving the answer, yeah. Most of the time they tell you what you made to do when you made a day, and totally irrelevant to the matter at hand. You
Yeah.
spoke about Barbados. Does Barbados did they vote everybody of one party in? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think they did it once, and I know they did it once, maybe twice.
Yeah, well, Mia Motley seems to be a very popular lady over there. She to run Barbados, right?
I have been listening to Mia Matley, and I always enjoy listening to her. Mia Matley is becoming not just a Barbados hero, well, a political hero, so to speak. She's a
Yeah.
very charismatic person, but Mia Mottley is a very intelligent person. The only fear I would have about her, which is the fear most of us would have about a person who sometimes is no doubt a knowledgeable and a highly intellectual person. Henry Kissinger, one time, I used to like to read his books. Henry Kissinger, to me, was a very intelligent Secretary of State or whatever he was. But Henry Kissinger was accused of being intellectually arrogant. I'm saying this because sometimes, as a leader, you are very knowledgeable, you are very charismatic, but you have to be humble. So, to me, when it comes to her, I can see her as becoming a leader of third world countries. She was at the conference in Africa where it was the ministers, I think, of finance, and she developed a powerful speech. Just recently at another conference, she was questioning the whole structure of the IMF and the World Bank coming out of the Bretton Woods period. And she made some very good points. You created institutions coming out of the war under the Bretton Woods Conference to see how you can carry out the development of the countries which were themselves your enemy, like Japan and other parts of Europe. And you spend billions of dollars to bring them back. And now today, yes, they may be your allies and they are powerful. But what has the World Bank done for us? For us, our countries, our small countries. You see, and who are the ones, he mentioned even the case, he said, look at the climate change. He said, we contribute the least to the fossil fuel. He said, but we are the greatest victims because when the water rises, of where islands going. So I said this because you asked me about Mia Mottley, and I believe that judging her by her pronouncements and the way she speaks intelligently, knowledgeable, very charismatic. Now you could ask me, boy, is it good for Barbados not to have an opposition?
But don't they have to, or maybe they don't have the type of constitution we have? Because I remember when the PUP went all the seats there, I think it was Governor General, or it wasn't even him. There's a governor there at the time, I believe, when Philip Wilson was made the leader of the opposition because they had to have an opposition. Remember that? It is not by law that there has to be an opposition voice in there.
No, there's no law that says you have to have an opposition. So if the people vote for 31 seats, all of the one party, there is no opposition. That's what I'm saying.
You're serious, Joe?
No, I'm serious.
We have to do some research and come back to you on that one. There.
You have the Constitution right in front of you. Read that part. What they did was when there was no seat, the opposition won no seat. Mia Mottley decided that they would have invited certain persons. In other words, it was no obligation by the Constitution. She was trying to give the appearance that she wanted an opposition. And I thought that, maybe that was.
It's in there. I remember seeing it somewhere. We have to suspend that.
I do guarantee you.
All right. I guarantee you, I know and forget it, and we'll come back next time and do it. Now, make we go on because we talk about the opposition, and you're saying how vital the opposition is. Whether you like Shine or not, you'll have to admit now that the opposition is at a very low point. They're not at all what you might call vital, vibrant.
What, the opposition?
Yes.
No, wait, make I correct it. I'm saying that giving only 5 of them, well, 4 as you say.
You think it'll do well at that point?
Proportionately, they are
yeah. But so there was only 5 of them.
Yes. 26.
Do you see the PUP, the UDP getting back anytime soon to a position where they can really put up fight, be viable in their quest for power again?
You see, those questions, I would prefer not to answer them, except to say that I would wish they do become a strong opposition.
Yeah.
Because you want a credible alternative. Because if you don't get a credible alternative, then you got the same government, even though it's not what you may have wanted. So we want a credible alternative. We want to move the election of voters, of representatives, get away from the lesser of two evils. That is bad for this country. Many voters will tell you coming into elections. This last election was definitely one of them. Boy, I don't like the PUP, but after all, they're not that as bad.
Yeah.
In effect, and they tell you, boy, I want to vote for the lesser of the two evils. Mr. Chairman, when you reach that level in your democracy, that you cannot have a choice between the better of two good or the best of the good, that is an admission that your democracy is becoming just a veneer. That is serious for our country. So I would say that I would never wish that this country, don't care how much of a PUP I am, I'd never like to see this country live without an opposition.
All right. You'd like to see them win a few more seats than they have won. Also, too. I mean, you want them at least stronger than they are.
Whenever you reach the point, and I can speak something about Barbados. I have friends there. I communicate almost daily with people in the government in Barbados. In fact, I had people who ran. I was in elections in Barbados when they were having elections. Now, when they could have voted for 31 or whatever they were, they got almost the same amount like we, and never voted for one opposition. Can the incumbent, which lost at the polls, could they have been that bad? That they prefer not to have one of them? Can the party have gone so low that they never even want one of them at the polls? Or was it just a coincidence? It could be. They never set out. I don't think the Barbadian people set out to do that. I think they made their choices, and that was the result of the choice. But it was not by design. They couldn't design that. They can't design before the election that they want to make sure they vote not getting one, because when you look at the numbers that the opposition got, if it was proportional representation, there would have been an opposition. Because you can get all the seats, but with the majority votes, you could win only by 100 because of the first past the post. So you see again merits in our democracy where the culture of the people does not augur well for first past the post. When you have so many people who have voted for the opposition but they never get one seat, why, that's not democracy.
Let me get your opinion on a couple of things that have been put forth. One, set date for election like the US have it every first Tuesday of every November. They have an election day. Belize, we have to rely upon the Prime Minister. I can never forget in 1998 with the let them wait, where they kept they stretched it out to the last possible time. Certainly, the Constitution demands that there has to be an election within a certain period. There's some also who suggest that maybe we could do a 4-year term instead. What's your?
I prefer to have a fixed term. I prefer for the date of an election to be predetermined as it is in the US. But I also hold strongly to the belief that we should make sure we have laws that can be effective for recalls. No, I say that because if you have a party, as it is now, that can choose when and call election, he could call it 1 year after, he could call it 2 years after, 3 years, 4 years. But if you have the party where he's understanding clearly that he has 4 years to do the job, but that if he violates to the point that he undermines the rule of law, he can be removed. So the benefit of maybe calling it whenever you think is best. It gives the voters a choice. Some of them will do this. I remember Mr. Price had done it, which was not a good reason when he called that early elections in 1993. The PUP was almost cocksure that they would win that election. And we lost. We lost narrowly, but we lost it. We called very early election. Mr. Price made a statement. He said the job is done. I said, but why you have done it in a short time? He said, well, because we did very well. He said,
Yeah, well, of course, that wasn't his motive behind that. Certainly, right? He just thought that they had the opposition at a low point, and they needed to strike while the iron was hot.
well, it is something like that, but not really that. It is, well, we can talk about it now. I was involved in it. Evidently, we had some negatives against us. And if those negatives had remained for the rest of the 5 years, it would have only escalated and become worse. So it was best to strike then when we thought that we still have some merits in our favor. And that made political sense for you. If you believe that something that you have gone so wrong, and that is why I caution governments, any government, I would hope that the political issue, but let me put it this way. The political issue, as the lawyer said, representing the Ashcroft Alliance, when he wrote to the Prime Minister, I forget the exact words, he said, but this won't go away. So what it is in fact saying, that we're going to the fullest. Meaning that suppose there is something so substantially, I'm just using, I'm going hypothetical now. Suppose you realize why they should make one terrible mistake. We should not have done certain things. And it look like they want to fan this fire now. And they are burn and they are burn. And they could burn down the house. What the sensible thing would have do then to give it some time and then you call elections. If you know the situation could only get worse for you, why wait till you get at the worst when you don't have a chance? So that one political strategy, that one strategic move.
Yeah.
That what happened in 93.
Well, it happened in 3 terms of the Dean Barrow government. Didn't he call election early every time except for the last time? But well.
I will say this, Mr. Chairman, and this is where I had a friend from Barbados. Well, he's a member of my family in a sense, by extension, by marriage. I have some friends that were in the Bajan government because through my connection over there, the Attorney General, and so we were all friends. The Minister of Health. But there was something that I wanted to come to just now when it comes to the way we govern a country.
Yeah, well, I was following you when you're talking about something, a comparison with Barbados. Those senior moments we have to deal with. Because we went on with the discussion actually them about the term of government and how they and what they calling early elections and whatnot, why they're usually called. But and I was always under the impression that we're trying to strike while the iron was hot.
You
You
bring me
seem
back to the, sorry, go ahead.
you think that was strike? You get it? Go ahead. Yeah.
What I wanted to point out, because this person from Barbados, who is my niece's husband, was sent from over there to be a party to the group that was going to oversee the elections in Belize. And then remember you had a thing from, not the United Nations, I think we had from the one for the region. Anyhow, they came to observe the elections. That was the second elections, not the first. The 2008, I think, was a free and fair election. We lost it. But those elections after, the one just after the 2012, 13 thereabout, that was not to me a free and fair election. But the United Nations and all the observers give it a clean bill of health. And let me tell you why. And these are the things that these observers come to your country, and I like them to come. But they cannot see some of the blatant things that went wrong. When you could have bring in from across the border so many immigrants, naturalize them in a short time, and get them on the voters list.
But they saw it, Joe. They saw that. Those observers saw it. They even saw the people being paid money, because I remember reading a report that they submitted where they did see all these infractions taking place.
No,
but apparently
did they mention it in the report?
They did, but apparently they were here to observe and comment, but
why
could do nothing about it.
Why did they give a clean bill of health?
I don't know that they gave a clean bill of health. They had
They
had conditions to that, Joe, as far as I can remember.
I know
I don't have anything in front of me, so I don't argue it.
But the argument I am making is this. They come to observe. So when they observe, they are observing only what happened on that day of election. So they go to the polls, they walk around, and what they see is that everybody is allowed to come in, everybody is allowed to vote, and they leave. That is the extent of their observation. Now, how those people are voting on that list, that 160,000 people with on that list, they are not interested to find out whether they are there legally or not. They're not interested in that. But, so when they come to make those observations, they only come to see what happened on that day.
But Joe, really, because at the way our voting takes place, at the day of the voting, the money is handed out in full view. People are being paid, and they saw that and made a note of it, because I recall seeing that there.
Good. That one I cannot dispute, because they can only observe what happened on the day.
Correct. So they saw that. Yeah.
The point they are making, there were 2 seats in Cayo area, 2 of them, and I knew about those 2 seats because the 2 candidates I work with. Now, they lost. One of them lost by about 4 votes, and the other one lost, I think, about by 10. If 2 of them had won their seats, the people would have formed the government from the second term.
Yeah, that was a close election, really.
So, let me tell you what happened. They needed some money, and it was not much. And what they needed the money for, they had people that they could have brought from across who were registered to vote. They're on the list. And they needed the financing to get them there, and that was not done. Now, that was a flaw when it came to the campaign management. And I was with them, and I know they didn't get it. Now, if they had gotten that, now we'll look on it after. So it might have believed what I guess happened. We look away without that. I don't need that.
But I think it was it wasn't that. It was that they felt that they had no chance, really. They didn't think they were going to win or it would be so close.
No, that wasn't it. I was with them. I worked with them. And I know the 2 of them good. And I can't believe that may win too. But when we realized that there were some voters that they could have brought to the polls legally, but they needed finance to give transportation and move them, the amount that the UDP brought, because they brought them across, get them naturalized, and get them registered. And when you look at the numbers that particular minister who was doing that, the amount that he brought to win, you could imagine if they didn't do that, those 2 boys would not have lost their seat either.
Well, though, because that brings us back to the Constitution, Joe. The Constitution that tells us that no person who is from a country who does not recognize Belize's independence, sovereignty, is allowed to vote in our elections. That was certainly unconstitutional, because what you're saying there is exactly, we know it happens. They bring them over, naturalize them, and they vote. Now, something wrong with that, because according to the Constitution, they should not be able to do that. How do they get away with that?
You remember when the matter went before the court over a particular minister government under the UDP. And the court ruled. The commissioner of police was there in the courtroom, and the court ruled and ordered the commissioner of police to investigate. And the commissioner didn't investigate. My brother, I'm saying here, those kind of things have all the characteristics of an authoritarian government. How can you have a court order not being enforced?
Right.
That's
Then that's the breakdown of the whole system right there.
That is serious. In other words,
Yeah.
if you have a head of the military, the defense force of this country, who decides to become a vassal of a politician or a party in power, we can have easily that party stay in power. No, we can also have the party stay in power under the guise that it was free and fair election. And these are the things we need to be careful with. That when the very public officers of our country who swear loyalty to the citizens, not to the politicians, are the type of members of the permanent establishment now, not the ones then that the government appoint by virtue of being political appointments, which again we don't have any law for, but then do it by practice. But when you have that, they happen. For we, democracy is a great risk. Because if you can manipulate your commission, your auditor general, your accountant general.
But it's easy when they're all elected, appointed by the prime minister, though, Joe.
The danger is when politicians become vassals. I mean, when public officers who swear their loyalty to the citizens but become vassals to the politicians.
That's not new. We've had that situation for a while. The Constitution, though, because again, how is the reform committee going as far as you know? Have you heard any updates on it?
Well, they had a meeting at Biltmore, I think, last week.
I'm wondering if it might not be one of the reasons Myvit did not come back, because I think we want an explanation to our viewers and listeners, because Myvit was with us for a while, as you know, a regular on the show, but being a member of the constitutional reform, and we're speaking so much about the Constitution, I am wondering he might not have decided that it's not a good thing for him to be making himself available or so available to us for us to ask him questions, which he might not be able to answer. No,
I don't think that. I would say that if you are a member of the commission, it gives you the advantage of being on a show to express what's supposed to be the public understanding of the commission.
What they want the public to get across to the public. Yeah.
Now, if there is anything, and I don't know if it's possible that there could be something that is yet not for public exposure, then obviously you'll refrain from bringing that out. But don't tell me that by virtue of sitting on it. But again, everybody to his own choice.
Yeah, you just never know. But so they had a meeting, but I don't know if anything, how far along they are they to the point where any recommendations are being made. And you told me that there was a number that was thrown out as the percentage of Belizeans who have not read the Constitution, and it was quite alarming. You want to repeat that number? That
the figure they gave was, I know the figure was 98%.
98%.
But the way they put it, as if though that 98%, that like they never read it and they don't understand it.
Right. Yeah.
They said that, boy, if we have so many people, now that is the justification for carrying out the education program. So one of the good things that I think will come out of the commission is that there will be an education program before they get into the consultation. So what they do, they have divided I have to read what they agreed. I have to get a copy of it. I think it's for public consumption now. But I think they divide it into 5 zones. And evidently the diaspora will be a zone.
Which is good news for our friends abroad, I'm sure.
And I would say that I would encourage Belizeans, and I want us maybe coming out of this same uh, opportunity we have here, is to maybe enlarge the consultation to the extent that we can meet face to face and begin to build a group that when the chance comes to express views of the Constitution, we will be having the benefit of hearing from as many people who we believe we could bring. And then when we come to the show, we can have a night where we give a good amount of time to sharing those views. And
Well,
that's a part of the education right there.
I had spoken to the chairman, Mr. Chanona, and he was enthused. He really wanted to join us one night on the show or have a representative, which I believe will make a lot of sense because if they really want to educate, there are forums like these they might need to use. Now, the question I have to ask you, Joe, why is the Constitution not taught in schools? Why is not? Why is it not? There's not some. We used to have civics classes one time in primary school. I don't know that they even have that again. Why is it not being taught to students?
It's one of the things then that I must say that when I listen to the Minister of State in Education, which is Dr. Zabani, that's an area that I would give credit to the government. I can see where they are making some great improvements to education, the curriculum. I think with Dr. Zabani being, the right hand to Dr. Minister Francis, I
Yeah.
think they are doing. I think that the government is doing pretty good in terms of how he's trying to shape education in the country. And I give a lot of credit, I said, to the ministers, to the minister himself and the minister of state. Because I had conversations with them on education itself, which I had the benefit of reading, and the expert who did the one for Finland and who did the one for the university. I forget the name, one of the top universities in the US. He did a lot of reform in education for countries and for institutions in the US. And I had the benefit of reading what he put forward for the reforms. So as I listened to the things being put forward by the minister, I think it is good. Now, to answer the question, there was a time when we knew a lot about the Nile, but we never know about the Belize River.
Hmm.
Obviously, that's not the kind of education we want. We want first to know about the things that are around us, and then we expand into the world. So, why is it that the Constitution is not being taught in our schools? I think it's because of short-sightedness. Tell me, can anybody give me the reason why it shouldn't?
A good reason. Yeah, I don't see any. I don't see any. Um, Another thing I think we need is a pledge of allegiance. We need to come up with a good pledge of allegiance that to kind of get some patriotism instill in our children. We don't love this country enough, Joe. We really don't care enough about it to fight hard enough to make it a better place. Uh,
Well, you bring me back now to something where I know you don't want me to praise you for. But I would have thought that that project again that you are doing is a way that we could build patriotism, because that is a way to educate our people when they are interacting in sports, any activity at that time. That is the opportunity we have to build patriotism. If you look at the country today and you go to any event, I notice at times when even the politician, when they play the national anthem, doesn't even do the proper thing.
mm, yeah,
So, yeah, when you go to these events and you are playing the national anthem, it gives you a sense of our patriotism.
that is true. Many people remain standing.
Yeah,
They don't even pay. Well, they certainly don't know the words, so I don't expect them to sing along.
they
But
do
at least give the respect, stand up. And yes, with this program, this program that we have here at the Charlie Burton Park, we try to instill that in our children. And by the way, let me blow my horn here and pin some flowers, because we had 5 children graduated in this last graduation class, from 5 of them that came through the program at the park that went from primary school to high school. And one of the children, her name is Alexis Smith, was the valedictorian. She had got a bunch of honors bestowed upon her. So she made me really, really proud. And I think that we are doing something here that might be adding to what we're trying to do, which is make Belize a better place for all of us. Joe, we've come to that point. We're exhausted in 2 hours already, boy. We're not too bad without Greg. Greg has promised to be back with us again next week. And where we end, we once again cover some of this ground, and we invite people to get involved, join us, call in, touch base with CY if you want to get with us at any point on the show. Let us have some participatory democracy and get this country moving forward, and get our Belizeans. Again, you did state about the 5 zones, one being the diaspora. Here's an opportunity for us to get the diaspora involved more with the governing of Belize.
I wanted to end on that note that seeing that the zoning that is being done, the diaspora is one of the zones, I would suggest to the producer of this show, Mr. Clinton, perhaps to try to look at how you can use this show to bring somebody from the same group on, and to dedicate maybe an hour of the show to the issue of the Constitution. And perhaps through the chairman of the commission itself, Mr. Canona, we can engage him, but this would have to come more from your knowledge and Mr. Young, how they can use the show to reach out to people.
Well, I can tell you, see, we're pretty flexible on that, and as long as something like that, we will have no trouble convincing him of that. So we talk to him off here, and we get it worked out. We certainly will work on that because it's necessary. Folks, we want to thank you guys for joining us. And Joe, again, a pleasure, sir. You've been a Trojan on this one. We're stuck with this. CY, thank you very much for your every time we see next time. Simplest. Yeah, man.
Violence prevention, that will mention why you have to spit with so much bad intention. So I'm gonna say it, so shall it be. What's the seed far close to the G? You know, say retire that is negativity, plus you say they complete. Even though you have dollars, they fall like rain. Still want drive in another man lane. No shit, you don't need no gimme for to make the lyrics popular. You don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it ball like a weight. Jump up in the air, somewhere beware. We fling bout the lyrics like fear. We don't need no gimmick for to make the lyrics public. We don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it burn like a way. Gonna jump up in the air, somewhere beware. We fling bout the lyrics like fear. so they make noise easy. See why alongside Wavy and my boy, YG. We don't need no gimmick, for make the lyrics public. We don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it ball like a wig. Gonna jump up in the air, song by beware. We fling bout the lyrics like fear. We don't need no gimmick, for make the lyrics public. We don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it ball like a wig. Gonna jump up in the air, song by beware. We fling bout the lyrics like fear. Music doesn't know it's gone. And a toy, some boy, me telling us, you know, must realize whole globe done change. Watch me like the words out of my mouth is changed. Some your lyrics that I forget, rearrange. You don't be money get hotter than pepper when you sing. Why you have to this song so bitter? You get opportunity with that responsibility to achieve reality. We don't need no gimmick to make the lyrics public. We don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it ball like a wig. Jump up in the air, song by beware. We fling bout the lyrics like fear. We don't need no gimmick to make the lyrics public. We don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it burn like a way. Gonna jump up in the air, song by beware. We fling bout the lyrics like fear. Violence prevention, that we mention. Why you have to spit with so much bad intention? So I'm gonna say it, socially.